So now we have our calculator set up and we have a document ready and open. We're ready then to start doing some calculations. And in this video, I'd like to focus very much on different calculations and how to put them into your calculator. I hope that you find that it's easier to put in more complex calculations into this calculator than in your previous one. It's one of the really nice things about how visual you can make calculations on this calculator. So the first thing to note is that our main calculator section is this section here, but we can also type using the alphanumeric keyboard at the bottom. So this is the main area we're interested in. And you'll notice that we have certain buttons, some of which have blue above them, and as the control button's blue, it shouldn't come as any surprise that to access these functions that are above the buttons on the calculator, you press Control, and for example, if you want to take a square root, then you press this button here, and that secondary function is used. If you'd like to go back at any time, you just need to press the Delete button. So let's have a look then at doing some expressions, evaluating some expressions. If I said, for example, that I wanted to know what 3 times by the square root of 12 is, and I pressed Enter, then you'll notice because I haven't changed my calculator to always approximate to a decimal, it comes out with 6 times the square root of 3. So it's good in the way that it simplifies my answer for me. However, it doesn't give me a decimal answer, which some of you might like. Now, I showed you a few of you in class about converting decimals to fractions. Actually, there are a few different ways of doing this. So rather than just pressing the Enter button, you'll notice above the Enter button we have these 2 squiggly lines. These mean is approximately equal to. So if I press Control and then Enter again, it shows me it approximates my expression to a decimal. So these squiggly lines mean please approximate this, I'm not interested in having it exact. The other way we can do this is if in my expression I put a decimal point somewhere, then that's telling the calculator I'm interested in my answer as a decimal. So if I said 3 times the square root of 12 decimal point and pressed Enter, I would also get it as a decimal. There is also the other way of doing it, which I showed you in class, which was 3 times the square root of 12, Enter. And then if I go Menu, then number 2 for number, number 1 for convert to decimal, and press Enter, then it gives me the decimal again. So we have a few different ways here of converting this expression to a decimal and also simplifying it. And so this is why I quite like that way of the auto setting that I showed you at the beginning, because it is quite easy just to convert between the two by using the squiggly lines there. And also you get a simplified exact value when you need it. So that's how we approximate to decimals. The second thing I'd like to talk about is large and small numbers. If, for example, I had the fraction 5/2 and I wanted to raise it to a high power, I'll show you how to do that and then what the calculator does. So if I press the Control button and then the Division button, you'll see I get a fraction with 2 parts to complete. So in the numerator I need my 5, and then if I press the down arrow and my 2 in my denominator, and then normally in your calculator you'd have to put the whole fraction in brackets, in calculators you've used before at least, the whole fraction in brackets and then raise it to the power. However here, if you just press this right arrow button, then we can use this hat to say I want to raise it to a power, and you'll notice that the brackets come automatically. You don't need to write them in this calculator. So it's a little bit time saving as well. And then I put 74 in there, and I press Enter. You'll notice that the calculator thinks it's very, very helpful, in that it does 5 to the power of 74, and puts that very long number up here, and it does the same for 2 down here. If you have a really, really, really big result like this, which is unlikely to happen, but you might, if you press the up arrow to select this and press enter, then you'll see it puts it down here and you have a cursor. So you can move along the whole number and view all of the number that you get. So it will move like this, and then you can see the whole number. But of course, I mean, this is a ridiculous number to work with. So if we use our control enter function here, then it will approximate it to a decimal for us. And this here is in scientific notation. And that's what it does with really big numbers and really small numbers, probably like your previous calculator did. So this says 2.8026, and this E means multiplied by 10 to the power of 29. So we have about 2.8 times 10 to the 29. And that's standard form that you should be familiar with from last year, and I understand that you also use it quite often in physics. So, if we had a really small number to deal with, let me just show you how that works. So, we have our fraction. Let's say this time we have 2 over 5 raised to the power of 74. This time I'm not going to use my control enter to convert this to a decimal number. Instead, I'm going to put a little decimal point in there somewhere and then press enter to show you that also works in bringing this into standard form. So this is 3.56812 times 10 to the power of negative 30, which of course you know means 0.0000, lots and lots and lots of zeros, 356,812. So a tiny, tiny number. And you'll notice that this decimal point doesn't only work with the square root sign, it will also work if you raise things to different powers. You might find, if you have big powers that you're raising things to, that the number you come out with is really, really big, and it might be too big for the calculator to deal with. And I'll show you what you get if that happens. So if I put in a fraction, and let's say I have, again, 5 over 2, and I raise that to the power of 2,531, and I press enter, you'll see that I get this infinity sign come out, which of course means it's really, really big, and I get an error message come on this side. And if I use this keypad here to hover and click on my error message, then it tells you what your error is. So it's an overflow, which means it's far too big for the calculator to deal with, and it's been replaced by infinity to let you know that it's a very, very big number. And of course, if it were a very, very small number on the negative side of things, then it would be negative infinity. So that's dealing with converting things to decimals, approximate and precise representations of numbers, also large and small numbers. There's also something that I would like to deal with in this video about using previously used commands, and hopefully this will convince you that this calculator is far easier than any one that you've used before. So if we had a quadratic equation, let's say we had x squared plus 3x minus 9 equals, where's my equals sign? Equals 0. And I was asked then to solve this for x. Now we all know that we can use the quadratic formula. So what I can do is I can use my fraction function to put the parts of the quadratic formula in and get a solution out. So I have minus b, and rather than using this minus button, I encourage you to get used to using this minus button here. This is minus is in the sign before a number, and this is minus the operator. So if you have a negative number, you always want this one, and then that means that you don't have to use as many brackets. So then we want plus or minus the square root, but let's start with plus the square root of b squared, so 3 squared, minus, and this time it is the operation, 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -9. And you'll notice that I don't even need to put this in brackets. Then if I use my down arrow to get into the denominator, divided by 2 times a 2 times 1. Then, if I press enter, you'll notice that it comes out as this, which you might not like, so I can do Control Enter to get it to approximate it. And I find that one solution is 1.8541, which I could round to 2 decimal places. And we know that because it's a quadratic equation, that we have a second solution. So rather than writing all of this out again, I can just go up, up. So press the up arrow twice. And then if I press enter again, it brings this expression down here. So I've just selected this and pressed enter. Then I can use my cursor to go back along, and then I can delete out this plus, put in a minus, and then let's do Control Enter straight away to get the decimal approximation to find my second solution as -4.8541. So you can see that I can use this calculator to really quickly solve quadratic equations. And once you've had a little bit of practice, you'll be able to do it in no time at all. You've probably noticed that we've used quite a lot of lines in the calculator application. And according to what I've read about the calculator, this application can store up to 99 lines of information. So, if you find yourself getting a little bit close to the edge, what you can do is you can say Menu, number 1 for Actions, and I can press number 5 to clear the history, and that wipes everything I've done. And then you can start again from scratch and you can go through. If you do this accidentally, then of course there's always a get out clause, just like on a standard computer. If you press Control and then Z, this is the undo function for the calculator, so it undoes the last thing that you did, and so it will bring everything back so that you can then use things again. One final thing I'd like to show you in this video is about using the previous answer that you have. So if, let's say, here we have -8, enter, then our answer is -8, and we can use this if I now, rather than typing anything, just press squared. It automatically comes up with answer squared, probably like your previous calculator did, and you can press enter, and it automatically squares the last answer. And I can do that again and again, and I could, if I wanted to, develop a sequence of constantly squaring answers. I can also use this answer explicitly. If I wanted to say multiply this previous answer by 2, I could say 2 times Control, and this button you see ANS, that's short for answer, enter. And that multiplies my previous answer by 2. So you have two options. You can either just press the key that you want it to do, or you can use the answer explicitly with this function in here. So I hope now you feel kind of comfortable doing basic calculations within the calculator screen. I'd recommend just, opening a textbook, maybe an old one, and doing a couple of simple calculations that you felt comfortable with doing on your previous calculator, and trying them on this one. You could also take some examples from physics, where you've had to calculate maybe some more complex things using calculators, and then seeing if you get the correct answer, and also getting a feeling for what the calculator expects from you and when it's a good idea to put brackets in or not. Like I say though, this calculator is quite nice in that it doesn't demand too much in the way of brackets as long as you're very clear about what you put in, and it lays things out very nicely. Again, if you have any questions, leave a comment or write a note in your book, and we can deal with those next time in class.